Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Ellen here with a new video for you. Welcome to the fourth part of What If Deku Had the Rinnegan. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So, we begin. Adaptability, Izuku had learned throughout his life, was of tremendous importance to one's survival. When life gives you lemons and all that, the point is you have to be able to make the most of what you get, whatever that is. More often than not, to Izuku, that meant just keeping himself afloat. Today, it apparently meant going along with a so-called quirk assessment test. Standing outside of the school, in his PE uniform, fiddling with the hems of his shirt and keeping his purple eyes darting restlessly around the field, the meadow-haired boy took in a few calming breaths, tapping the tip of his red shoes on the floor uneasily. His classmates all looked pretty excited for it. He supposed they wanted to show off their potential to their teacher. Even the glasses boy, Iida-kun, he remembered, looked like he was looking forward to it. He risked a look at Bakugo. The boy looked murderous as usual. No, maybe a little more murderous? That either meant he was excited or pissed off, usually both. That's just how it was with the explosive blonde. Aizawa looked at them all from a few feet away, his back slanted forward and his eyes unblinking. Again, Izuku couldn't help but invoke the image of a caffeine addict. The bags under his eyes and the paleness of his skin brought forth the sensation that the man wasn't doing all that well, but still he moved with a practiced grace that, once noticed, was hard to miss. "Are you all done already?" Aizawa's voice rang clear despite his almost mumbled tone. "If you want to be heroes, you can't be wasting time with meaningless things." Pragmatic. That was, so far, the best adjective Izuku could use to explain his new homeroom teacher's view on heroics. Pragmatic. Twice already he had emphasized the busy nature of a hero's life, going as far as to scorn making friends or attending events. To Aizawa, heroism was a restless and constant effort. Izuku could admire that, he supposed, but the man was laying it on a bit thickly. "I'm sure you've all heard rumors of UA's freedom on campus. That extends to teachers, too. I am free to instruct you in any way I believe will be most effective." Midoriya's eyebrows furrowed, and he let his eyes wander for a second. Just as he'd thought, every last student present was following Aizawa's words keenly. The man knew precisely what to say and how to say it in order to demand a classroom's attention. Softball throwing, standing long jump, 50-meter dash, endurance running, sustained sideways jump, upper body exercises. If I'm not mistaken, these are activities you're all familiar with due to middle school. They're evaluations of your physical capabilities, while not using your quirk. The government still hasn't standardized a way to keep record of those values, and they insist on doing so only while banning students from using their innate abilities. That's negligent of their part. In here, it's different. His eyes turned sharply, facing at Izuku directly for a few seconds. Izuku stared back, though he admittedly felt like trembling and looking away. Finally, Aizawa settled, turning again to look at someone else instead. "Bakugo," he spoke. "How long could you pitch a softball in middle school?" The blonde scoffed, crimson eyes narrowing. 67 meters, came his reply. Aizawa motioned the boy over to a circle drawn in the dirt. "Try it again, using your quirk this time. Stay in the circle, everything else is fair game. Don't hold back." Ah, there's the Kacchan he knew. The snarl on the boy's lips gained a wild edge, and he started cracking his shoulders while holding the softball. Took in a deep breath, and threw. Die! The explosion that followed rattled everyone's bones. A trail of flames and smoke followed Bakugo's hand and was blurred by the sheer speed, pushing dirt and wind around with reckless abandon as the ball was exploded outwards, shooting off towards the sky so fast it was hard to keep track of. Silence consumed the field. Somewhere, the burnt softball landed. "Before anything, we must know exactly what the lot of you can do. This is a rational way to know how and where to train you," Aizawa muttered, turning a small, rectangular device so that they could all see the screen. It read 705 meters and a half. "Oh. This'll be fun!" someone exclaimed. A girl, apparently. The one with the pink hair, and skin. Pink everything, really. Fun, Aizawa repeated slowly. It'll be fun, you say? Oh, Izuku mentally repeated, dread filling his gut. Oh no. So you were planning on spending your 3 years here having a good old time? Having fun? I thought you wanted to become heroes. His tone was even, but the man looked about ready to murder someone. Probably all of them, his mind supplied helpfully. Izuku gulped. All right then, Aizawa spoke. New rule. Whoever places last will be considered as having no potential and immediately expelled. We teachers have freedom to choose our methods, remember? Oh no, he repeated again, with finality this time. Worst thing is, Izuku nailed his tests. I know, that doesn't sound like the worst thing. It certainly felt great, until he realized that someone in that group was going to have their dreams crushed. And even though he knew that it was in no way his fault, he couldn't help but feel at least a little bad. The 50-meter dash was almost trivial. Much like everyone with an emitter-type quirk capable of outputting force, his own Deva path could be used to push himself forward. Moreover, even his discovery of how to channel chakra into his feet could serve as an impulse former, as too much would generate an explosive force, which he ended up using to push himself into the air with powerful leaps, eventually landing him a time of 5.15 seconds, much to Katsuki's irritation. Likewise, the standing long jump was trivially easy for him, having been solved in much the same way, but even faster, because, turns out, his newly acquired Asura path, the one that turned his arm into a freaking cannon, allowed him to push himself with explosive force when already airborne. Again, Katsuki was pissed. The rest had interesting reactions, however. Ida had looked particularly interested in the way his arm had tore itself open to reveal mechanical engines and parts inside, which spun as they generated plasma from his chakra before returning to normal. Uraraka had called it cool, which made his heart feel warm. His results on the grip strength were pleasantly surprising, having gone up 10 kilos, and the sustained sideways jump were a simple matter of endurance. On those, his Rinnegan wasn't of much use, but Izuku had stayed in shape. For the 5th test, however...
Holy hell, infinity?!
Yeah. His hopes of getting first place in that test were pretty much annihilated from the get-go. How did that even work? The cute girl, Uraraka-san, was really something. He could think of so many interesting applications for her powers after all. The ability to make something completely weightless and immune to gravity? It was absolutely astounding. But that excitement gradually shifted into a sort of contained anxiety as he realized that, oh, it's his turn now. The concentrically ringed eyes of the Rinnegan blinked slowly as Izuku looked down at his hands, remembering the absolute destruction he had wrought upon first awakening his Deva path. Furthermore, and here his eyes wandered to Aizawa, his homeroom teacher had been growing more and more suspicious of him as time went on, having observed both his performance during these tests and, presumably, the entrance exams. The man it was as if he was looking for something. Evidence of misdoings, perhaps. Izuku took in a short breath, grabbed the softball. He didn't even have to use his Deva path. Shooting the softball with a charge of his Asura path cannon would be more than enough to achieve a good result without risking anything. Hell, even if he did use the Deva path, he was more than capable of expelling something with a targeted force of repulsion, like he had done with his screws. Having this many possibilities, it was almost euphorically dizzying. How far he had come from his quirkless days. So he grabbed the softball. Midoriya, Aizawa called out, if you even think about holding back. I won't, he replied resolutely. He wouldn't. There was so much he could do, but only one would push the ball as far as it possibly could. Only one, therefore, was a correct choice. So he reared back his arm, channeled chakra through his arm, took in a deep breath, and threw. At the last second, he applied as strong as a repulsive force into the softball as he humanly could, and immediately felt it drain on his chakra reserves as the sphere was pushed with such force that it was hard to keep track of. But he wasn't done. After all, Aizawa had said that, as long as you stay within the circle, you're fine. He lifted his arm, feeling the shift under his skin as the Asuropath tore open the skin again and transformed the insides of the limb into parts of a powerful cannon, a cannon which he pointed at the ball as it flew. This was the last test. So there was no real need to hold back, right? With that thought in his head, Izuku channeled as much chakra into the cannon as he possibly could. The resulting explosion as the beam was fired put Bakugo's own boom to shame. "Take that, Kacchan," Izuku muttered, already exhausted. Now came the bad part. Oh yeah, the whole expulsion thing was a lie. Then, with the absolute creepiest smile Izuku had ever seen in the entirety of his life, it was a logical ruse.
What?
Everything else had been standard enough. After screaming about that honestly traumatic experience for a few moments with Ida and Uraraka, as good a bonding experience between friends as any, he supposed, they'd be allowed to leave the grounds and go home. And on his way home, he'd made actual friends. Him! Making friends! Uraraka and Ida turned out to be far nicer than he expected. Well, actually, Uraraka was about as nice as he'd hoped. The surprise was Ida. He'd thought the boy rude, but he was just really intense about heroics and proper manners of conduit. It was kind of funny, actually. And the next day was fine, too. Really. UA wasn't like Aldera at all. People were nice there. The teachers, one of which was actual present Mike, were all very excited to teach them, and their teaching methods were all wonderful in that he could easily follow along but didn't feel bored or unchallenged. They had all the normal classes, it turned out. English, literature, Japanese, maths, you name it. Izuku had always been good at all of those. Really good. But he'd never gone through a school day with actual friends before. It turned out to make everything just a bit cooler, a bit less tense. Between classes, Uraraka, Ida, and himself could talk about the class, or their difficulties, or whatever it was they wanted to. Noon was great, too. The food was wonderful, courtesy of Lunch Rush, and the chatting was even better. By the time heroics came up, Izuku had never felt better about himself or his life. Then his mind caught up with him. Heroics. And that meant... "I am here!" came All Might's voice, booming as he practically kicked down the door to the classroom. "Walking through the door like a normal person!" A small part of his brain wanted to go, "Not quite, All Might." The rest of his brain, however, was too busy screaming in absolute joy and shock to properly act on that thought because, oh my god, it's All Might! He idly wondered if he'd ever get over that feeling. The answer was likely no. The rest of the class went crazy just like him, though, so he didn't feel bad. "Are you ready for," and he waited a few moments, "Foundational Hero Studies? In my class, you'll be building up your skills as a hero through various trials, such as..." And here he pulled out a huge plastic rectangle with the word battle printed on it. He'd probably had it specially made, too. "The Trial of Battle! And to go with your first battle, we've prepared your first set of hero gear!" As everyone cheered and screamed in absolute ecstasy, Izuku felt his own vanish into thin air and sank back into his seat as dread consumed his gut. He looked to his right, found Bakugo was staring right at him, a murderous look on the blonde's crimson eyes. "Oh no," he repeated internally. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.